All right. It says Twitch says the title is invalid, but I guess we're on YouTube, so I'm gonna
Okay.
go live anyway. Let's edit now. I'll let you take it off. I did not expect this. Did not expect this to start, but I'll let you carry over. I'm gonna change the Twitch title. Sorry about that.
Well, apparently we are live on YouTube right now and trying to get on Twitch, but we are here to talk about the horror movie Lowlifes, which you can currently see streaming on Tubi, which I know we don't do a lot of Tubi movies, but we figured, you know what? I think everybody has access to Tubi, so why not do one that everyone can see? Plus, I've been hearing quite a bit about this one on TikTok and other social media, so I messaged Mr. Smith here and said, you know what? Let's give it a whirl. I'm Adam Carlson. You are probably watching this on somewhere. I don't know, maybe my YouTube channel. I don't know. You're probably not watching this, but that's okay too.
I'm having trouble with your Twitch channel over here. It's giving us that weird. I've never had that before. Twitch says the title is invalid. Tried changing it a bit. Sure, I'll try something completely different. But yes, my name is Kyle Smith. Thank you.
Yeah, you may
Adam,
have to take the quotes out.
Let's take that out.
Maybe it works on Bolivian operators or something like that.
Well, thank you for inviting me and suggesting this movie. I'm excited to talk about it. This was a fun one that I quite enjoyed. So,
had you heard about this one before I messaged you?
I honestly no, I barely had heard of Tubi, and I was, I've heard you mention it. I got my Google account to sign in, and I was like, oh, cool. So this is free.
Yep.
And they've got some good classics on there. But yeah, welcome back to Adam's channel. Surprisingly, Adam told me before we started, we've done 26 horror movie reviews. We both
this is number 27 right here.
Yeah, we both would have guessed hard on the under for that. I thought maybe a dozen.
Absolutely.
But that's fun, man. We've got a cool thing going here.
Yeah, I'd like to keep going too. I mean, there are plenty that are always coming out. I know that pretty soon here I'll be able to watch what is it, Late Night with the Devil? I want to see that one.
Oh yeah. I would love to watch that with you as well and give a post on that. I was indifferent on it once I read the reviews, but it just looks too intriguing to watch.
But tonight it's all about Lowlifes.
Yeah, Lowlifes 2024. This is a fun movie, man. It immediately within 10 15 minutes of the movie, this started out not how I expected. So I always love a good twist. But
we all know like the horror stereotypes, and it opened like a movie that we've seen thousands of times. But it took our preconceived notions of what was going to happen, and it was like, nope, that's not where this movie's going.
Yeah, it was great. This is a 2024 movie written by Al Kaplan, directed by Tesh Gudakonda and Mitch Oliver. And I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know any of the actors or actresses in this movie. I haven't seen them. So I'm excited that, I get to see new guys and girls showcasing talent so I can kind of invest. And then immediately what I start doing is start figuring out what the character is there for and seeing if I like, I don't know if you do this, Adam, but I try to see if I like them in this role or not. And I'm going to go.
That whole main family, I thought, could have a future in horror movies. Every one of them played their role very well.
Yeah, and I'll just take the low-hanging fruit here. I'm not saying this is what happened, but this is where my mind went because I recently saw the latest Sydney Sweeney movie, the horror movie that I've now forgotten the name of in the moment.
Immaculate, right?
Immaculate, yes. And I told you, it was okay. She's one of the hottest movie stars in the world, and
the most popular.
Yeah, but she's on the rise, and she's very popular. And I was hoping we could do that movie, but I don't. If I didn't like it, and I know you like a wider range of things, I was like, she'll probably think this is way worse, even than what I would give it. But
I've heard it's quite a bit like The Pope's Exorcist. That's what I've heard.
Yes, that's actually a great comparison. Yeah. What I bring up Sydney Sweeney in that movie for is I see Amanda Fix, who plays what I would consider the main character, Amy, who is in a different team in this movie, who is from the get-go, she's a defiant member of her family. This family looks like your typical all-American family: mom, dad, brother, sister, and she's a little defiant. She's got kind of an '80s rock and roll look to her. And I immediately thought, it was like, oh, they got a Sydney Sweeney type. She's an attractive young woman, and she's going to take the lead for this movie. Although I won't say the movie is completely centered around her. Everyone in this movie, everyone plays a pivotal part, and that's one of the reasons I love this.
One of the things that you're mentioning about that daughter character is I felt they did a good job of making her someone that you believe as being a sexual person without over-sexualizing her. Like, throughout the movie, I didn't think, oh, this is, gratuitous, displaying of skin or something like that. It was just the way it worked out. It made it a believable character and not a caricature of a woman that they wanted to be sexy.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Very excellently put. Not that this matters, but I always like to put it out there. I'm in my mid-30s. I think you're a little bit older than I.
I am currently entering my mid-40s.
You and I, I think we're allowed to say, oh, she's an attractive young woman, whatever. But I'm not in the business of anymore feeling like I have to look at like a Jenna Ortega and sexualize her because there's
no, that feels
gap.
weird.
It does feel weird. And I think your point that you just made here was very good.
I think we had the same problem with one of the Fear Street movies where one of the female leads was getting sexualized, and we both felt a little creepy about it.
Yeah, and that, I think it's okay to have a moral compass where we don't do that. Like back in the olden days, they would care, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I think we have a better moral compass than most. And I like that you said that you can have someone where you say, look, like I see a Sydney Sweeney type here. She's a very good actress, and we'll talk about her role and some of the twists and turns in this movie. But yeah, that's very well said, man. I like that there's an emphasis there because I think that's a key part of life too. Just generalizing it a little bit. I didn't know what the hell was going on with my body when I was 16 years old, 17.
Yeah, because they're trying to like make her this age where she's in transition, trying to figure out she's becoming an adult. But she's still young enough to where they didn't want to, I think, over-sexualize her to a point to where they can still keep a little bit of that youth and innocence with her, which I thought was kind of nice.
Well, you need the innocence at the beginning of the movie because what ends up happening in a very short order is this movie, I don't want to say it goes off the rails, but man, it sure hits that second and third gear pretty fast. The movie starts with a scene of, a guy walking through the woods. I immediately go, all right, here we go. And he's being stalked slowly by a murderer. He gets killed. Murderer drags the body. You see the title. It's, okay, that's a cool title. Right. And you see a camper in an RV, which we've seen in another movie we reviewed early on in this channel. And when I read the plot, I was like, oh, okay, they're going to get stalked by people in the woods who are lawless and they have this.
Right, and here comes the two hillbillies.
Here they are. Just, right on cue, every horror movie trope we talk about. But what we learned very quickly, and shout out to both of those guys. Let me give the actors' names here. Richard Harmon, I believe his name is Vern, and then you have Ben Sullivan. Man, these guys, they played the atypical mountain hillbillies in this movie very well. One a little bit smarter than the other, so they can kind of direct traffic. But they play it, and they make it uncomfortable in the beginning because you don't know in the beginning the ulterior motive of this family yet. So that's pretty fun.
What's nice is that I think that if I went back and watched it again, a lot of the character dialogue that was foreshadowing what was coming was just nice. It was really well done. It made you think, they're kind of telling us what's going to happen in this movie if you're paying attention. Yeah,
if you don't focus in like with tunnel vision, kind of like I do, I get really bad. I'm a typical movie goer. Hollywood knows how to cater stuff to me because they know I'll take the bait. I thought that this family was going to be murdered. Like we watched, what was that one movie we watched? They were in an RV and they parked at a cabin somewhere. It was crazy. I forget the name of that movie.
I remember watching it, but I don't remember the title. I know that was one that we watched on Hulu.
It was fun, man. That was a fun movie. It was intense. There was a lot of good violence and gore, but That's how I initially, the first 5 minutes of this movie, I'm like, okay, that's what it's going to be along the lines of. And what we end up seeing is an uncomfortable situation. These two guys are kind of asserting themselves into a family they just met, into their life, asking about a relative. Hey, have you seen our relative? Which we end up finding out, if you took the pieces together, that's probably the old guy in the beginning. They're like, hey, where the hell is this guy at? We haven't seen him. Have you seen him?
Yeah,
I'm
they
like,
didn't come out and just tell you that was him. They kind of had to piece that together with stuff from, oh, is that his writing in that puzzle book that you're using? And it's like, oh, okay, because his R's are backwards or something like that.
right. And that, the little details like that, I'm glad you mentioned it, because it helps with the little stuff. The little stuff in between is really what makes it for this movie. Because I know people are there's gonna be intense moments. There's gonna be stuff leading up that's gonna be dramatic. But I noticed that early on. I'm like, this family seems like a wholesome 1950s family. What's the
Right.
catch? Why are they playing these movies? You have the dad that's a typical dad. Why are you on your phone? You need to be more involved. Blah blah blah. We're grilling, and then you even realize while they're grilling later on, you're like, oh, that's disgusting. Spoiler alert, they're grilling a person. These are cannibals. Had me thrown for the first part of the movie. I was like, oh, they're trying to have a nice, wholesome meal. The daughter's kind of not a bitch, but she's kind of sarcastic. Oh, you realize that this family is immensely broken. This is a hobby for them for sport, and they go out, once a year, very far away from Los Angeles, where they're from, so they can kill innocent people and eat them. And as soon as I figured this out, about 15 minutes in, I was like, oh, this movie completely changed for me. Now I'm even more invested than I was before.
The dynamic between the dad and the mom was interesting through the whole movie because the dad was still like, we got to teach our kids this lifestyle. We got to make them know what we're doing and follow us and be able to do this when we're gone. And the mom's like, well, I don't know if we need to do that.
Well, it's good too. You mentioned, I said early on when we were doing this, hey, you think they're these characters like some wholesome family. They're very broken and they're very different. Excuse me. So you can tell the dad is the catalyst for this kind of behavior.
Right.
This is definitely his thing. The son is very easily molded, as young
Yeah, he
boys
is
are.
following in his dad's footsteps pretty well there. Though
He
eager to do
does,
everything.
eager to do it, and I love that he wants to follow his dad, but he's very sloppy, as a young man would be. And then you slowly realize that the mother, it's a little friction between mom and dad.
Well, they also see the daughter wants to do things different, like she's thinking about going to college or things like that, and that's not really what the dad has in the plans for the family.
Yeah, and you see the disparity. We'll get past the first part of the movie here in just a second, but they seem like a pretty well-off family. They're educated.
It's
They're
worth
very clean
talking about the
cut.
setup here for a while because the setup
Yeah,
is what really makes this payoff later on so worthwhile.
yeah. They seem like a well-off family. The dad's very clean cut. Traditional family, what I would say from like your 1950s era. Mom has an apron and supports the husband. Blah blah blah. But then when you break down what's going on and you read the tea leaves here, rebellious daughter on her phone talking to what we think is her boyfriend at the time. Dad wants her to be involved. The siblings fight because they're completely different. They are run into by the two mountain folk, as I will call them, the two hillbillies here, Vern and Billy, and they're having some trouble. They're trying to find a family member. It's a very intense moment. Only the dad, mother, and the brother are there. Their son are at the table. Daughter shows
It's
up,
so
and you can
funny
see
because
the
during that scene,
creepiness.
like, you're worried about the family. You're not really worried about the two guys.
Yeah, and I love that they set it up that way. They look like the aggressors. They have mangy and like they haven't showered. Typical country mountain folk. Hey, kind of dirty, kind of country out here. There's a clean cut family having a picnic essentially,
Yeah.
and everything looks like, oh man, this poor family's gonna get slaughtered. You quickly see the daughter come back. The two guys are kind of eyeballing her. Makes it a little tense. Family says, "Hey, we can't help you." They move along their way. They're going along their route, thinking they're going to continue the vacation. And I think the one point of the movie that stuck out to me that was really pivotal in the characters distinguishing themselves where they stand, where their morals were. Now, I say morals, all of these people have murdered. So take
Right.
that with a grain of salt. But the mother is saying, "Hey, I think we should keep going." she's looking out for the safety of her family, regardless of what they choose to do in their spare time. She's trying to avoid controversy, and the dad is not having it. He's like, "No, we're here to do this. We'll handle it." So I thought that was interesting that the mother tried to keep a moral compass among all of them. Sorry, I'll be muting a lot. I don't want to cough into the microphone while we're doing this. I am battling a cold on the third day, so this is usually the worst. But yeah, I didn't know what your thoughts were when they left the picnic area, and I see this. I'm really starting to root for the family, as the movie industry would have me do, to root for the evil people, not knowing. Later down the road, you see the same truck blocking the road. Hood is lifted, and this is where things start to get a little intense. Just before everything pivots, the family is kind of on edge. The mother, especially, is like, "Hey, we shouldn't do this. We should leave." The father's like, "Hey, let's be good Samaritans. Let's take them on." The guy's offer say, "Hey, we're not going to be a threat. The gun stays with me. I'm going to stay here. He's harmless. Take him into town so we can get some help. My truck is broken down." So ultimately, against the mother's will, father says, "Hey, hop on in." And the lesser of the two, I believe his name is Billy, and I say lesser, he's not the smartest of the bunch. He hops in, starts playing that game you were mentioning on the pad where they're guessing a noun, an adjective, a verb, trying to pass the time on a long family trip.
Right.
And I thought when this first happened that this was like a vision, because they were very irritated with this guy.
Right.
That I thought this was some kind of just like daydream from the young boy's perspective. Well, out of nowhere, the daughter comes up from behind this man and stabs him in the neck, or did she strangle him? Can't remember. But
I thought the son stabbed him in the neck.
maybe it was him. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Yeah, Mr. Billy dies very out of the blue, kind of spontaneous, and it threw me for a loop. I was like, "What's happening? Is this a daydream?"
And the way the parents were so calm when it happened was kind of surprising.
Well, that's the part that threw me for a loop. I was like, "Oh, this is definitely a dream," because they're just acting like this is no problem. And what you quickly realize when they're in Breaking Bad style hazmat suits is, oh, they're cutting this guy up. They're saving it. And then that's when everything all at once just rushes in my brain. I'm like, "Oh my God, they killed the guy at the beginning. Oh my God, they were eating him at the picnic." Oh no, this movie just completely flipped upside down like a snow globe. And now I'm picking up the pieces thinking, oh, they're doing the thing where they're kind of blending in society, but these are terrible killers just driving around with a hobby.
Yep.
And now you start wondering, okay, what happens next? Now you can glaringly see as the viewer when they stop at this house along the way, and the poor little, southern mountain family answers the door. You're like, oh no, this is going to go really badly. They stop at the house that they were told was going to be up ahead. And this is where I always, if you guys have watched any of our reviews on this show, I will scream at hey, this is obvious. The real life person is jumping into movie land. You shouldn't do this. Look at the red flags. Hey, yeah, your cousin told us to come by. I've never met you. You are not coming in my house. Absolutely. F off. No way. So I always laugh at that kind of thing. It's like, oh, you just know a name, and now you just get instant access to the home, and should have known better at that point. But there's a young family, or there's a family there.
I did like that there was a little bit of argument between the people in the household about letting them in or not. To me, that kind of made it a little more like
realistic.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'd be some dialogue, much like there was in the RV before we found out who the family really was.
Yeah, it's that kind of dialogue in this movie that kind of, I won't say grounds it, because a lot of those kind of horror movies of this style are really kind of like, you got to accept things that aren't very realistic, and this one doesn't really force you to do that.
No, it doesn't. And I like that they're, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but what I remember the most from, especially like diving into these movies and really dissecting them is there's a lot of innuendos and a lot of premonition that comes out, and they try to drop these hints because they want the characters to be like clever and maniacal.
Right.
You see that here, but it's tastefully done and it's sprinkled in with like just the right amount. It's
Yeah.
not like biting into a super hot chicken wing. You're like, oh, this has flavor. I can kind of, I can get along with this dry talk at the table. You can totally tell these people do not care whatsoever. They're going to murder these people, so they truly don't care about them. But they have to put on the persona, which is also that's the thing for the movie for me that really got me there was, oh, I want to see how well they can keep it. How well could you sell this to an ignorant family that would take you in, and see how good you are at it. And
one of the things that really made me enjoy this movie in some instances that kind of surprised me was including scenes that other movie makers may not have included to give the context of what's going on a little more power. Did we need to see the daughter playing piano? No, not at all.
Probably not. But it adds a great
definitely
personal
added
touch.
to the power of the scenes too, of the ones that involved her when they started doing some of the hunting and deciding who they were going to kill and when. It added so much more than just not exploring a little bit more about these characters.
That's a great point. Like I said, that it offers a little more personality to the scene, a little more depth. And like I said before, man, outside of the main character whom you only saw from one scene, every character in this movie has a good spot. I mean, there's not any wasted, hey, there's just a random guy here just to say a line.
Even scenes that feel throwaway, like when the guy at the truck was talking to the cop that pulled up.
Yeah.
Again, a scene that probably didn't have to be in the movie. But having that in there not only had the foreshadowing of, I could treat you right here and nobody would know, which I thought was awesome.
Well,
but,
I like
it
that.
also added a lot of context, like, okay, there is some questioning as far as this community isn't always so tightly knit. So, this family that's there, maybe they would have a better success rate doing what they do here.
I mean, that ultimately ends up showing itself. But I like that scene that you mentioned that, yeah, I think it could be throwaway. But it also comes into effect at the very end.
Right.
Which we'll talk later because that
at the time it felt completely disposable.
Oh yeah, you're right. In the moment, you're thinking, okay, they're just giving you an update on the characters, but really, later on, reveals itself as one of the positions that one of those characters is in, which I didn't see coming, but I enjoyed because I thought for sure this movie was going to be, cookie cutter ending, which it doesn't have, which is kind of like the norm now. Back in the 80s, 90s, whatever, you would try to go for that cookie cutter ending and then have a surprise.
Oh, yeah.
Now we do the surprise about 5 to 10 minutes before and really try to get you to support the villain, which is what this movie ends up doing. But this family is fully indebted now. We're about a third of the way in. This random family, this very poor family, has offered their home and a meal to these people. Now we're starting to divvy up. Okay, the dinner's over. Hey, we'll take the free housing. Thank you. We'll be out of your hair in the morning. Everyone's getting their room assignments. And you can kind of tell it's going to go as planned. The mom and the dad get a room to themselves, one of the nicer rooms. The young boy gets a really terrible small room. And then the main character, you can see just enough tension between her and another female character. They get paired in a room together. And then you kind of see, oh, okay, these two might have a thing for each other.
What did you think of the scenes with the poisoned chocolate?
In the beginning, when you don't know the family's ulterior motive and who they are, I just thought the young boy was trying to be nice and fit in and maybe de-escalate the situation.
Yeah.
You don't realize that everyone in this family is a tactician of some sort. They are a technician of, hey, I do a skill very well. They may not do everything very well like the dad, but they ultimately have something that they can do. They're trying to fit in and earn their keep between this.
Well, when the family realizes that boyfriend is a gigantic man that could probably physically dominate any one of them, they knew they had to get the upper hand.
Yeah, and it was smart to gain an advantage there because they both know as soon as that guy walked into the dinner scene, they're like, "Oh, this is a new variable we didn't plan for."
Yeah.
Okay. So things had to be altered, which was,
And they
smart
even
to
like
use.
helped to establish that he was a gigantic gentleman by having him be upstairs and hearing him moving around.
Oh yeah,
Like, oh, that's a Big Tom or whatever it was up there.
it was so Texas Chainsaw. I loved it so much. They didn't even show his face for like five
No.
5 to 10 seconds panning, and I was like, man,
And they
this
were
is
already
so.
establishing him as being a threat to his family.
Yeah, it was funny. Oh, he doesn't miss dinner time. And you just hear this giant lug of a man dragging his boots upstairs. You can tell the size of it before he even enters the room. So
Oh yeah.
I thought that was a nice touch too. That was a good point. So moving along, we have the room assignments. You see the tension here between Amy as the character, and then is this the right one here? I can't tell if it's. I believe it's Savannah is her name. Very beautiful redheaded actress. There's a sexual chemistry there. There's a liking there, and you start to wonder now that you know what the family is there to do. Is she going to spare this girl's life? And I think there was a moment in time where the main character Amy would have let her leave had she not have to explain herself, and she just taken her advice and ran.
Yeah, Amy
But of
had every
course,
opportunity there in the bed to just stab her and kind of get her part of the work done, but she was
yeah,
very hesitant, and I think a lot of that was because oh, you have dreams, you want to go to college, and it was like when the dad was saying these people don't have dreams, and then she's finding out, guess what, they do.
yeah. If you have a thing against classes in society, this movie will make you very mad because this family definitely looks down upon them based on their income, based on I'm sure their accent and education, and yeah, it was very very. It was heartfelt, even though you see later on that they're all despicable people. It's crazy because you see her empathizing, saying, "Oh, you don't have any dreams," and very elementary. She says, "Oh, I dream all the time. I had a dream last night about this." She's like, "No, silly. Do you ever want to get out of here?" Really breaking down her walls and getting personal with her. And I'm like, she might actually let her go. I wonder if the movie will allow this. Ultimately, it doesn't, but you see the connection there. And this is right
And the
before
old
the
sick
movie goes
man there
crazy.
being like, you don't need to stay here and take care of me, go pursue your dreams, and the girls are like, no, we need to take care of you. And that was another thing, like after that whole speech where the dad was like, these people don't have dreams, and it's like, they do, but they have their own things holding them back from achieving them.
Yeah, and it's weird because it shows both of the similarities to this family, even though there's only that one. They both are very intertwined, very tight families.
Yeah.
One is obviously more sweet and innocent than the other, but I saw that comparison there, and it's like, oh, these are two families. They don't think the same of each other. They're basically aliens to one another, but
Right.
you see the similarities that at their core they still support the people that they are close to. But yeah, the bed scene certainly turns into another gear where the movie kind of gets the boost, if you will. If you were playing video games back in the '90s, where you get that extra jump of, all right, here we go, we're about to kick it up a notch. The family is going to pick off the family members one by one. Ultimately, we start hearing the poison take effect on the young lady in the movie. Her name is Julie Ann, played by Cassandra Sawtell. She and the huge guy, what's the huge guy's name here? I don't have him in front of me. Big Mac. Daley Nelson. Man, they start getting sick. They're fighting over the bathroom. Poor Julianne is like, you can't come in here. Like, I need the toilet. So he goes outside to vomit, and Junior just can't keep to himself. He kind of blows his wad to come outside and get a kill, and he almost loses his own life there. If not for his stomach being very messed up and upside down, he may have died outside. And that would have certainly thwarted the plans. Because that's the last guy in the family you want to make mad is Big Mac.
Right.
But they end up fighting outside. The young boy slowly tears down Big Mac. Jeffrey, his character's name. And there's some commotion going on. This leads the dad, who I got to give a shout out to the dad. Very believable psychopath. The little mannerisms he has and the big moments. Matthew McCall, he plays Keith. He's a very good run of the mill.
That was great casting there.
Yeah, for sure. He plays the role very well. he takes care of the old man who is sick. Big Mac is dying outside. There's some commotion going on, and now the two sisters, are becoming suspicious. And this is where the movie kind of goes off the rails for the murderous family because things don't go to plan after this. Um, our lead character, Amy, has every opportunity, like you mentioned, to stab the other character, but she doesn't. So Amy and Savannah, they were about to, well, at least Savannah thought they were about to have sex, and Amy's planning her kill. She can't do it. Savannah pulls out, and Amy ends up stabbing herself with a knife, which is kind of crazy. I like that human element because you don't see that very often in a lot of these movies. I remember seeing it in one of the Texas Chainsaws where Leatherface actually cuts his leg, like in the thigh area. And you're like, okay, this is something that can actually happen, you know? So they're trying to tend to one another. Savannah goes outside, ends up noticing that the mom and the dad are out in the middle of the night, finds it suspicious, so she smartly kind of lays low and hides in the shadows. And then she realizes, oh, wow, what I think would be her brother-in-law, Big Mac, is dead. And then she realizes something's off with this family.
But you kind of glanced over a little something that I thought was really important was that after she hurt herself by falling on that knife, the daughter was talking to her, and she said, "Is there anything you can't do?" Because she was going to fix her up and going to get some stuff to maybe stitch her up and clean her up and take care of her wound. And she was talking about going to college. And I think at this point in the movie, something really clicked in the family's daughter's mind that this girl has something to offer the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do remember this scene. Kind of rushing through that so I don't have a bug.
I know you don't want to drag on that too much, but I felt that was an important part of this movie right there.
No, that's a good point, man. I was trying to rush through so I didn't have the bug in my throat pop up again. I can hit the mute button in time, but yeah, you find out quickly that if there's an alpha in the family of the southern, very distant mountain family, it's definitely Savannah. She's kind of the main character of that family. And you find out quickly she's got some wits about her. She was going to go to college.
She's got a wall full of awards.
Wall full of awards in her room, and then you see outside she's the only one who was like, I wonder if something's off, you know.
And they even hinted about that right away at the dinner table or whatever when she said, "Oh well, she's going to be the first member of the family to go to community college."
Right, first one in the family. I love that there's something to root for here. It's very, purposeful by the movie makers and the director and stuff.
They're purposely giving these characters dialogue to really not only set up what's coming, but to give you insight as to who these characters are before things start happening to them. And with the way films are these days, especially horror movies, you don't always have the time to create those kind of create those kind of feelings about characters that aren't the main focus of the story, to build those relationships for the purpose of telling the story as things go along there.
Yeah, and then, some movies that are just about gore or violence, they don't take the time to give this depth of the character that this movie did. Because if they just wanted to go for a body count, you didn't have to tell us about this. You didn't have those little things, like you said, the awards on the wall, or them mentioning that she's going to college. This goes in later when she sees the parents of the deranged family outside. She takes it upon herself to hide, which we end up finding later. She has a little Katniss Everdeen to her. She's a good archer, and she could shoot a bow.
Yeah, they actually mentioned that in the bedroom too, the two female characters that were sharing the room. And I thought that was a nice little nod there too, to kind of more foreshadowing. This movie had a lot of it.
Yeah, you end up seeing that later on, and shortly about the scene I'm talking about coming up, where she hides. She gets her weapon of choice that she's very good at. And I'm going to mute for this police car, but I'll let you fill in the gap here for a second.
Yeah, so when the boy is outside and he's doing his sloppy work on the big gentleman, she does see that happening a little bit outside the window and is really confused about what's going on. At that point, she kind of like cues in and she realizes what's happening, and she starts to scramble. And when she can't find anybody to talk to about this, she starts to worry not only for her life, but the life of her sister. And at that point, she kind of takes it into her own to, okay, I kind of got to go on the defensive here.
And when she takes on the defensive, like you just mentioned, what happens usually in every horror movie where I invest in anyone that I like, the one person from this terrible deranged family that I was rooting for is the first one that dies. The poor mother is battling a pill addiction. You see a couple of scenes in this movie where her and the husband are fighting, where he's definitely like a more boomer age mindset kind of person, where it's like he's the alpha, he runs the family.
Right.
He's saying, you don't need to do this. You don't need to be on this medication. It's changing you, blah, blah, blah. Not knowing it's probably the only thing that's keeping her around and keeping her sanity. And they're talking again. They're having a struggle. The young boy is there. Now they're taking possession of young Julianne, who goes through the ringer in this movie. That poor girl. And they're going to tie her up. They were going to kill her on the spot right there, but they're having a discussion. You don't realize in the scene exactly where they're standing in their kitchen. The mother's talking. The young boy is inside. The father is there. They're having a moment, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's an arrow through the throat. And that's the moment where I haven't had this in a long time in a movie, where I was 50% shock and awe, like, oh no, but I was 50% like, thank God they're going to get theirs. This is amazing. I was completely torn down the middle of like, damn it, I like this character, but kind of glad this terrible family is going to have some payback on them now.
And I kind of liked that if you weren't paying immediate attention to this movie, they kind of give you a little bit of nods to help you figure out what's going on. Because like you said, you immediately figured out that when they were at the campsite, they were cooking that dude. But if you didn't catch that, you would probably notice it when the dad cut the daughter's finger off and started sucking on it like he was going to eat it.
Yeah, there's some intense stuff. I won't say that these props, like you can tell these are fake hands, and it's funny because they didn't have a super large budget to film this. One house in an RV and one like random location in the woods probably didn't cost a lot of money to make this movie.
Very small cast too, and that does kind of lead to what could be a problem for some people, is that this movie doesn't have a large body count. If you're walking into this movie hoping for like a more of a slasher approach, you're not really going to get that.
Yeah, this one will certainly take you for a ride rather than shock and awe. You get the shock and awe between the investment. The investment is the word I'd use for this movie, where you've really got to let it ride. It's a slow burn, but man, it's worth it. Getting to see these characters kind of go through the roller coaster of the situations that get presented. I think they do a great job, much like if you were going to have like a 6-course meal of, hey, for 10 minutes you have this, gnaw on this for a little bit, munch on this. We're taking this. Now we have a new situation, and it just kind of flows. Like the flow of this movie is very good. I don't know how you felt, but there wasn't really a part of this where I was like, I'm going to skip because I'm bored.
I didn't pick up my phone that much either, so I gotta say I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, I didn't have a moment where I thought like, oh, this is, I'm not invested, and I think the duration of each thing kept you long enough where like, yeah, there's some dry spots in this movie, but they're pivotal to little points later. Like you said, this movie does so well at foreshadowing.
It will reward you for paying attention.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So at this point where we're in the review, the mother has died, and you kind of see how cold and deranged the father is. He's not even upset that his wife just died, or at least he's not actively showing it. The son is a little taken back, but he's looking for the father, like, hey, what do we do? What do we feel? The daughter is very upset. She starts bringing up their broken marriage and this, that, and whatever. And then we realize there's somebody hunting us. We're gonna make sure we get a hold of her. So they tie up the one of the two remaining sisters, Julianne, to a chair. They start calling for Amy and say, hey, look, we're going to take her out piece by piece unless you want to give yourself up, which ultimately works.
Right.
But I felt for poor Julianne. She's the typical, like, she's going to be the martyr in this movie. Like, hey, sorry, somebody's got to be the one we pick on, so we're going to pick on you. Amy ends up sneaking through the back and taking the son, Jeffrey, by a knife point around the neck. Ultimately gives herself up for the greater good and says, I'm not going to let you just brutally murder my sister while I stand here. I'm going to try to comply and see if you'll show mercy.
Yeah, it was an interesting tactic. I don't think that the family at all believed that she was capable of taking the boy out, because that threat was something they did not take very seriously.
Which is funny because she ends up taking him out later on in an even more brutal way. I mean, if
Right.
I had to pick through the two, I think I'd probably just be like, "Hey, slice and dice, man. I'll be out of here in 60 seconds." But yeah, you have this classic scene, which we've seen in some movies before, where there's two people tied up. They're taunting them, they're teasing them, they're basically just toying with them until they want to kill them. And they ultimately reveal their plan. They're like, "We're going to kill you, and then we're going to light this place on fire and torch it."
Right.
Or maybe that's their plan all along. They're like, "We're not even going to kill you. We're just going to burn you alive in the house." Whatever it is, they reveal the plan, and they're about ready to, finally get it done. And then there's a point where I said, this is a typical horror movie thing, but it works. And for this movie and this plot and everything, I guess it kind of is okay. Not my favorite tactic, but they're breaking fingers and cutting thumbs off and stabbing these girls, and they're just being assholes to these two girls. And
Yeah, that,
finally,
that did feel kind of unnecessary. Like that
oh
to me,
yeah,
one part of this movie that kind of made me confused. I get they want to punish the girls for what happened to the mom and for making things so difficult on the family, but if they've been doing this that long, odds are they'd probably just finish the job and go home without the mom, and you know
yes.
kind of reconfigure things once they get that all figured out.
They do in this movie what a lot of villains do in action movies, where when they could just point the gun and kill the hero and just shoot them in the head. They do
Yeah.
that thing where they like leave the room, or that typical like the Austin Powers thing. It's like, you remember Scott Evil standing there? He's like, "Dad, are you not going to watch him die?" He's like, "No, of course not." They get a little cocky. They get a little too invested in themselves, and they talk a little bit too long. What happens is, and this is a good scene too, Savannah ends up spilling the beans about Amy to her father. "Hey, did you know your daughter's a lesbian? Hey, did you know that guy that she's talking to, Blair, that's actually a girl? Hey, did you know she's also a drug addict? I'm still high from the weed we smoked earlier," because she laced it with God knows what. And that causes turmoil because of all the things this guy has morals about. It's what his daughter is doing, in her free time. She wants her not to be a lesbian and not to do drugs, but it's
Right.
okay to eat people. I thought that was pretty funny and ironic.
Yeah, the standards that a dad had are definitely interesting.
They're flipped upside down for sure. Ultimately, what this does is give Savannah and Julianne enough time to where um, they can kind of get ready to escape. During this whole scene, you don't know it at the time. And I knew it. If you didn't catch it at all, you would find out here because it's so blatantly obvious. The dad, Keith, super deranged. I think he's in an apron and a chef's hat too. He's just goofy as hell. He's cooking up Big Mac, and he took a chunk out of his arm like a steak, and I was going to feed it to them, which I thought was extra deranged. Very Hannibal Lecter of him.
Yeah.
Uh, they're both like, "We're not eating that. You're going to kill us anyways. It's not happening." So yeah, they end up getting a hand loose. Savannah grabs a knife, stabs him in the eye. Wouldn't you know it? Because it has to happen in every horror movie. Here comes the guy that you thought was dead from earlier. Vern pops through the door and takes a shotgun blast straight to the dad's shoulder. He's got a fork in one eye, gunshot wound in the other. I pretty much wrote him off right there.
Oh
And
yeah.
poor Vern, he tries to have a valiant effort. He ends up dying in the living room, but does get to damage one of the family members. So that was kind of cool. Um, Savannah is still alive and kicking. At this point, the young son is still there, Jeffrey. This is where some of the most brutal stuff happens in my eye. Like getting stabbed in the eye with a fork, pretty bad. But getting boiling hot water thrown on you twice, God, I couldn't think of a worse situation. And some of it on the face. Oh, God. Burns his hand. I'm sorry, he didn't get it twice. Burns his hand on the stove, gets boiling hot water thrown in his face. If you're in this situation, I have to give you guys horror movie tips 101. If you have a pot in your hand and a guy has just got water thrown in his face, smash him in the head. Never hurts.
Oh yeah.
Always helps. This doesn't happen. This happens in a lot of horror movies. Do the job. If you've never seen Zombieland, you always double tap every time. No double taps in this movie. He and Savannah have a struggle in the kitchen. Savannah ultimately breaks his neck with, I think, like a roller or something. And
Yeah.
just wicked. Cool kill. She's kind of physically exhausted, which I really appreciate when they show victim or villain. Hey, I just had a struggle in real life. If you and I were to go at it and you ended up having a fight with me, or I had to fight with you, no matter who won between the two of us, we're both going to be physically taxed after that. So
Oh yeah.
I appreciate that they showed that between her. And now, oh yeah, great kill in the movie. Probably the best one that happens in the living room. I think they show a short second later. The dad, Keith, and the sweet sister, Julianne, they're going at it. Dad has to eat his own eyeball for whatever reason. Has to. It says, I bet yours are sweeter. So that was kind of sick. That gave me goosebumps. I was like, oh, that's gross. He's going to do that to her now. They fight. She gets the upper hand. And sledgehammer to the head while he's down, which was awesome. And I love the realization, even though saying a swear word is kind of like cheap, when he realizes, like, oh, no, this is it for me. I'm going to get killed by a lesser human that I thought was like subspecies. Bam! Coolest kill of the movie, in my opinion. Sledgehammer to the head. They do it off camera, but you see his feet just go limp. Good sell on that. Very, very 80s. I like that a lot. And then it comes down to like a pro wrestling event, man. You've got Savannah versus Amy. And like any good heel and babyface, they go back and forth. They have their blows. You think that it's going to end with, and I thought, dummy me thought that it was going to end with a good heroic ending. The hero lives. Savannah has the upper hand. Amy's pretty much down and ready to be pounced on. She tells her to run. I'm going to make this slow, which I understand. In hindsight, after seeing your family get murdered, you want to take your time. But she did the classic villain mistake. You have the opportunity to kill them, you kill them. They run out the front door. Piece we left out earlier. The cops were called by Savannah, which is ironic that she's about to die by one of them. Amy, the villain, runs outside. Savannah's running down the stairs. Boom. Instantly dead. Police officer shoots her. And then it makes sense from earlier that this family and the local police have beef. And all he sees is her running with a sledgehammer behind some poor town, like out-of-town girl that looks like she's running for her life. So in that complete snapshot for half a second, it kind of looks like, I see why he did it. Man, he's going to feel like a dummy later when he finds out what happened. But he's not going to find out what happens.
The one thing I want to touch on that you kind of like went past a little bit is there was one scene in this movie where the two daughters were looking, or the two sisters were looking at each other like they were going to live, and there was like a surprise kill of the other daughter from behind that kind of not only changed the entire tone of the movie, but it kind of changed the direction of both of the two main daughter characters as well. Because at one point you thought, well, maybe they're going to get all this together, and at that point you knew, no, they're not.
Yeah, skimming through, because I should have given it 2 watches, so I'd have had more of this retained. But yeah, and I think that's where a switch, where you see the good versus evil, where you see like, oh no, the girl that we're talking about before, Savannah, she's part of the good family that ends up getting killed. She has another gear than the rest of her family. She has the skills that her rest of her family don't. And she also has the wherewithal inside to, you know, not be evil, but she has a killer instinct where if she needs to, or survival instinct, I should say, if she needs to try to fend for herself, she's probably going to be the only one out of this family that's going to make it. And that's where you see that turn on. She's pissed. She's full of rage. She wants vengeance and justice. And it's a good point to bring that up. Ultimately, the other sister did die. So there's only 2 left. There's 1 from each side. And they end up running outside, one chasing the other. Ultimately, the only one left from the good family, the innocent family, and the victims gets taken down by the local police.
And at that point, if you're watching that, you think, okay, well, now the cops are going to take the daughter of the main family to safety, and she'll have an opportunity to restart her life. But that wasn't quite it.
Not the case at all. And what I love is, as much as you saw the juxtaposition between her and her family at the beginning of this movie, when you have this as this is in your blood, her dad is a stone cold killer. Her brother is a stone cold killer in training. That blood is still in you no matter what. It reminded me a little bit, now that we bring it up, It reminded me a little bit of like, I know you don't prefer it, and it's not my favorite either, but the latest Scream movies, they do that thing where they have Billy Loomis's daughter as one of the main characters, and it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I know you're a good person, but there's still psycho killer blood running through your veins, and it's in you. Do you choose to give into it or not? And you see that, I don't know what this girl's going to do. I think this would be a fun little spinoff or maybe one little series, maybe not even a movie. Maybe she does go to college and
I would be curious
maybe.
to see what she does next.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I would totally watch. But you end up seeing her take out the cop and in a very vicious, like very maniacal scene where you don't even see the cop get killed. There's a lot of off-screen stuff, but her, with that scary looking, like evil in her eye, and she's about to slash him with her knife. And then
Then
I
you see the
love the
house
fact
burning and the RV driving away.
house is on fire and she's just driving away in this RV she was talking shit about earlier, which is hilarious. But she puts on one of her victims' hats, and I thought it was hilarious that she just like the only perfect thing is you just light up the joint and you're like, well, I guess this RV came in handy now. And what is she gonna do? I would totally take this and run if I was someone who was invested in making this movie have a sequel of some sort. Is she goes to college and she sort of keeps this. God, this could be a little bit, maybe 5% like that last movie we reviewed, 15 Cameras, where you
Yeah.
have someone maybe she gets in a relationship, she actually likes another girl, maybe that girl knows she's a killer, she keeps her around. I mean, this could go any different way in the olive branches there, but I'd be invested to see if they wanted to do a little sequel based on that character. There's no characters left to involve, so it's going to have to be about her. But I don't know about you, but I thought
It's
that
kind of
only
exciting
carried
that
the
you
movie.
enjoyed this enough to where you would care to see more from that kind of storyline.
I'm not saying that she has the same charisma, nor will she have the same personality, but Amanda Fix, I need to see more of your work. I'm interested to see more of your work, but the
Yeah.
character Amy, like I said, definitely has a Sydney Sweeney vibe in this movie, and she carries it. Like she can do it all. And it's one of the things too where I've complained. I mean, I don't want to sound misogynistic or annoying and narrow-minded, but some of the complaints I have in my favorite movie. I mean, I have a Ghostface tattoo if you guys can't see. I love Scream. It's my favorite franchise. I don't believe for a second in the fifth movie there's a 110-pound woman that's going to go around and kill somebody minor atom size. I just don't believe it. In this movie, I kind of believe it. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because she's taking on someone that's like-minded and like size, but I also feel from the family, maybe it's the family variable there that you don't know, like subconsciously. I believe she has evil in her enough to do this. Because she flipped that switch from seducing a young woman to like she's about to go down on this girl and she's pulling a knife out. And I'm like, would there be a worse way to go? That sucks. you know?
You were mentioning it, and the sequences with the action, with the fighting and everything, it for a low budget movie with a cast that isn't relatively known, they did a fantastic job of getting those scenes played out on the screen in a way that felt good enough to where I wasn't questioning a lot of what was happening.
I didn't question any, and I don't know, Adam, if this is just a typical horror movie trope. A good chase scene in a
Yeah.
house. I love when there's people that aren't there that are, they don't know the layout. And then you've got the person that's like, hey, I've lived here my whole life. I know the nooks and crannies. I know what I can do. I love a good chase scene in the house. And that's me being a typical horror for Scream, because they have a lot of those between the first
Oh, yeah.
movie and around campuses. But I think it adds a reality to it. And with, like you said, the budget they had for this movie, I mean, you can do whatever you want there. It's a classic formula, but it works, I'm with you. I didn't
Absolutely.
find myself debating on the realness. There's a couple moments where I'm like, this is a red flag, don't do it. But then obviously the movie itself wouldn't have happened. But we're not
But a
basing it
lot
in
of things
reality.
too, like where a smaller character had leverage, it was believable because they had the leverage. They weren't just overpowering the bigger character.
Yeah, of course. Even and also that's a good point. The overpowering and the leverage, it also happened between both sides. This isn't a movie that it's just going to be a bunch of brutal kills. Like I felt when I watched the Hostel franchise, I felt sympathy for a lot of these guys, even though in the first one they're pretty much dirtbags.
Yeah.
They're kind of helpless the whole time. They don't really have a chance to fight. In this movie, there's a little bit of wits and just enough. Like I said, this movie, the theme is the rations and the portions of things. They sprinkle it in just enough where, Junior is out here going in like he shouldn't have and not listening to his dad, there was a very good chance that he could have gotten killed early on. He ultimately dies later, but there's a good seesaw back and forth and balance of like, oh man, I don't know where the momentum's going to swing, and that I think that keeps me interested the most.
What do you think of the scenes where the dad was grounding his son?
Oh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's hilarious because that's when his moral compass comes in, and I'm like, dude, how off your rocker are you to be eating eyeballs and eating fingers like a crazy person? And they're like, well, oh, you can't do that, and you're grounded now. It's like, what? Now you have rules? Like, okay, sounds good. It added a good funny, and that's the thing. This movie doesn't have that many funny moments, but if you want the irony and the hypocrisy, there is a handful of comedic moments in the movie where you're like, what's happening? Like how does what's her name here? Damn it, Kathleen. How does Kathleen, one of the older siblings, or no, it was Julianne. Julianne is on the toilet because they have issues with their gut. They had been fed, poison basically. How does she walk into her bathroom? I don't care how much you have to throw up. How do you not see an eyeball in a bag? I thought that was hilarious. I'm like, you don't notice a bloody eyeball in a bag? Like, it's not even hidden. I thought it was hilarious that it fell out of Amy's pocket. I was like, of course it does. That's hilarious. I thought that was just a funny little nugget. I guess you have to find stupid stuff like that funny, but I can't believe we talked about this for an hour, man. This was a fun one. This is a great suggestion, and I love when we agree on things. And we're kind of 2 for 2 on the last.
Well, here's the thing: was this a great movie? I don't know if it was great.
No, not at all.
But it was a really good, unexpected movie that took what you would expect from the horror genre at times and kind of flipped it on you a little bit. And I like when a movie can make you think a little bit and give you something you weren't expecting.
Yeah, let me phrase. The movie itself is not a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. But the suggestion was great because, like you said, there's a typical formula, much like I'm a country music fan, in Nashville, Tennessee, 3.5 minutes, much like pop radio, intro, verse, catchy chorus, second verse, catchy chorus, bridge, end on the chorus, blah, blah, blah. That's the formula for 40 years now. There's a couple of different ways you can do horror movies now. But what I like is, and kind of the way like I write music myself is, okay, I have this typical formula. Let me just rearrange the pieces a little bit. I still have the same ingredients, but man, when it's presented a different way, it's fun. This movie was fun. And
yeah, you go to Taco Bell and you get it's the same 7 ingredients just in different ways.
Yep. I would love a beefy 5-layer burrito, but also I can have it in a Crunchwrap Supreme, and now I have one crunchy element, and my mind is blown.
Right?
Thank you. This is not sponsored by Taco Bell, but it could and should be. But yeah, overall, man, casting was great. I believed every character. I think they did very well on depicting each character's belief and depth. Low budget, but not to the point where it's like, this is glaringly obvious. I think they did very well with what they had. Like I said, maybe 10 minutes ago, whenever you can involve a house being the main point, it's going to be very intimate.
Right.
But I appreciated it. I liked it. I didn't have any complaints about it.
And there wasn't a point in the movie where I was like, well, this movie could have used a little extra money for, better props in the RV or something like that. I never felt that way.
No, I think it did well. I mean, and it's just because you were picking a poor part of whatever part of the country or a poor city. The people in it were poor, so the things didn't have to be over the top. They didn't have to drive Rolls Royces or anything, but it just felt like it went together. So I have to give a good shout out.
Don't flush the toilet. The flusher ain't working.
Standing outside of there with the plunger is hilarious. Another good comedic part of the movie. Al Kaplan was the writer. Kudos to you, Tesh, Gudakanda, and Mitch Oliver.
Yeah, that screenplay, like I said, it wasn't a tight screenplay. I know Hollywood these days wants a tight screenplay where something is always happening. And this was not written that way. This was written for you to take your time, watch it, and enjoy and pick up on the little things that'll make this movie more fun as you watch it.
Yeah.
That's what this was intended to do, and I thought it succeeded.
I don't know if I would classify it as a ballad because it's not that slow if I had to compare it to music, but this is one of those slower songs that you kind of like, this has to be in the set list every night. At some point, this is a pivot in the set list for an artist. This is one of those where we'll just say it now because we always give a would you recommend or not. I recommend this movie. I don't know if I say highly, but this is definitely one of the ones where I say no. This might shock you. It's probably a little better than you think it might be.
Right.
And it was a good suggestion by you. If I'm giving a number on it, I will give this movie a 7 out of 10. I like it. I'm not going to go any higher because then you reach like the upper echelon. But I think 7 it's a solid rating. That still leaves a little bit of improvement. But for what it does and the way it was made, I mean, you can't really do much better with the ingredients you're given with plot, cast, money, and
I wasn't too far off than you where I was going to go about a 7.2 on this.
Yeah.
Because I'm usually a little higher than you. But I did feel like with what this movie was trying to do, it accomplished it. And if you go into this movie expecting a Hollywood-style movie, you're not going to get that. You're going to get a low-budget movie that will make you think a little bit more and make you question your expectations of horror movies going forward, hopefully.
You know what it is? I'm too bad about rounding and even numbers. Maybe I have OCD that I don't know about. 7.2 is about right because the 6, if you write anything a 6, there's something that's obviously you didn't like. Right. There's nothing in this movie that I didn't like. It's just sometimes, like athletes, you and I, we may be able to do a bench press. I mean, we may be able to do a certain thing in football. Like, let's say you and I are linemen. I know you were one before. Let's say we have the motion we can be, but we're just never going to be physically gifted to be, Joe Thomas reference here, whoever. Right. We can do the motion and we'll cap out at, 5 out of 10 on our best days. This movie caps out because it kind of has to, but it doesn't. It's very consistent there. The floor of this movie is much higher than what you think.
If this screenwriter and this director had a bigger budget and a bigger advertising budget and a bigger casting ability, I mean, I don't know if I would have changed much of the casting, but I do feel like if this movie had an opportunity for a Hollywood remake, I think it could do something with it.
I think it could be successful. I think all you need is a semi-recognizable B-list actor as one of the main characters for the villains.
Yeah.
And then, shit, man, you could have the same girl come in. I don't know, she wouldn't do the same role for the same movie twice. But if you could have someone who's relatable enough, like Amanda Fix was playing the role of Amy, you just need 2 solid people. Like, the face, you can't think of the name right off the top of the head. This could be one that does better than expected. And I love that Bernie shows up every single podcast. He's my favorite.
He does. He's always here.
I can't believe.
I had a good time watching this movie, and I do recommend that if you have some free time and you are struggling to find a movie to watch, why not boot up Tubi, see what you got?
Tubi. I got on there. It was free. I have a Google account. Adam suggested it. If you want a horror movie to watch, this is I recommend it. Like I said, I'm not going to say highly. It's not going to knock your socks off. We're not talking about The Exorcist here or like the first time you saw Jaws. But man, it's a fun movie. This is a fun movie, and I like that it's in a modern setting, and I was pleasantly surprised. So shout out to Lowlifes and everyone involved. I enjoyed this movie.
I thought you said you don't have a cell phone.
So, dude, I'm telling you, there's a handful of moments in this movie when you catch it, it will make you laugh. It's like, yeah, dummy, you're the one that said you shouldn't have let him in the house. Yeah, there's a red flag. And then they just change the subject and they don't talk about it.
Right.
I was screaming inside, like, trust your instincts. Oh, it's so fun.
But you can head on over to YouTube and you can see the full catalog of movie reviews that we have over there. This is number 27, so there's quite a bit.
Wild.
It's a lot of movies, and hopefully we'll have some more to talk about in the future. And if you have any recommendations, just hit me or Kyle up, and we'll take a look and we'll see what we can do.
We'll do the shout-outs like we do on the football podcast. Adam is on all social medias.
I'm all over. I'm on TikTok, so take it away.
Yeah, right. Send your suggestions to Adam. This is his channel. I am very lucky and happy to be a guest here. Send it all over any of the social media sites.
X is probably the best to get a hold of me.
Yeah, we're both active on X, which is nice. Here's mine. If you'd like to follow me or send me a suggestion, we'll gladly put it over. We're not going to guarantee we're going to watch it, but we definitely will be open to listening. It's not an automatic
We
No.
try to stick to more modern, newer releases if we can.
Yeah, like I would love to, and I watch Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm
Right.
Street, Scream. I watch these on a regular basis. But I just think, for Adam's point, not to take words and put them in his mouth, take words out of his mouth, but it's just been done to death on the YouTube realm now. I don't think you
Right.
need our opinion. We probably have said what 30,000 other people have said on this kind of platform. So we're trying to get ahead of the game and do more recent stuff. But we will certainly, if it's, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, if it's within the last 3 to 5 years, we're more apt to be like, sure.
All right, I do
This
want
is
to
a
end with
classic.
one more thing. One thing this movie really made me think of is, have you've seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil, right?
Once, a long time ago, but
Okay,
yes.
if you own the DVD, there's a bonus feature where you can watch the movie from the college student's point of view and make Tucker and Dale look like the villains. So if you have the DVD,
I
that is a
don't.
very good, worthwhile viewing, and that's what this
Oh my
kind of made
God.
me think of.
That's incredible. I did not know that, but that is so funny. Oh, that would change everything. Oh, that would absolutely change everything. That's great. That's a good nugget. I see. I learned something today. I'm in sweatpants and being a fatty fat today, and I learned a nice, cool. That's awesome, man.
So once again, thank you to everyone who listens. If you share or like or whatever, that's great. Thank you to Kyle Smith for joining me again. I always appreciate when we can do this. It's always cool to talk about horror movies. I love them. I don't know when we'll be back to do another, but hopefully it won't be too much longer.
Before we go, Adam, sorry to interrupt. If we have to do shameless plugs here, we do a more frequent podcast about the NFL. We are major Minnesota Viking fans. I've been with these guys for 10 years now. We are doing a live draft show tomorrow, Thursday, April 25th. Wanted to throw that out there in the universe. It will
Nice.
also be on Adam's YouTube channel. The Purple People Podcast is the name of our
Sadly,
show.
I might not be able to attend. I'm hoping to watch it with my nephew.
That's all right. You'll have me and another Kyle, which is always chaos. But that'll be
Which is
tomorrow.
funny because I work here with two Kyles, and then over at the Viking Age, I work with two Adams.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know. Yeah, well, I remember Adam Patrick, but I don't remember that. That's great. Yeah, just wanted to plug our football podcast, Purple People Podcast as well. We're doing a live draft show tomorrow.
Absolutely.
But thank you
As
guys.
you can catch at NC Dog Dude on Instagram, every once in a while you'll go live and play some music.
Yeah, I'm pretty soon here. I'm going to be playing through my EP live and acoustic. I am just about done with all the songs, so we're about to start rolling.
Very cool. I can't believe we talked for an hour about this movie too. We just don't stop. All right, thanks again to everyone, and in the meantime, stay bloody.